Hey everybody! So today we're going to talk some more about aspect patterns. Today we're going to talk about the T-square. This is a common one, or not, I see it a lot. So I know somebody mentioned the mystic rectangle, wanting, I don't think they didn't say like do something on the mystic rectangle, but I was going to, but I figure maybe doing some of the ones that I see more often than the mystic rectangle might be a good place to start. The T-square is one that I see a lot. So I figure we'll start with that. A T-square is three planets, at least three planets. Two of them are in opposition. And then the two planets that are in opposition are squaring an apex planet, or what I would call like the apex of the triangle, right? So you might have something like the moon opposite Pluto, and the sun is squaring both of these. This is just a for instance. I would use, obviously the tighter the orb between the planets, the stronger that T-square is going to be felt. So if you've got like the moon at 15 degrees Taurus, Pluto at 15 degrees Scorpio, and then the sun at 15 degrees Leo, that's a really tight, that's a tight T-square. I would definitely, that would obviously be considered a T-square. If you had like, let's say you had the moon at 12 degrees, let's say you had Pluto, 12 degrees Taurus, let's say you have Pluto at 15 degrees Taurus, and you had the sun at 20 degrees Taurus. It would really depend on the whole chart as to if I would consider that to be a T-square. And that's only because the orb, the moon at 12 degrees Taurus and the sun at 20 degrees Leo, that's kind of wide. It's kind of a wide orb. But since you're dealing with a luminary, since you're dealing with the sun and the moon, I might be more inclined to count that. Whereas, like, let's say you had the moon at 12 degrees Taurus, Pluto at 15 degrees Scorpio, and then Mars at 20 degrees Leo. That I might not, since Mars isn't a luminary, I might not count that as a T-square. My point is you want to keep the orbs pretty tight. And the tighter the orbs between the planets, the stronger the impact the T-square will have. So you're dealing with two planets that are opposing one another. In this case, the moon and Pluto. So in this example, so you're looking at somebody who's going to have probably, and I'm not really taking houses into account, all of that, so I'm just kind of focusing on the planets here. But this is going to cause somebody to have they're going to need to balance like their how they express, how they are emotionally, what emotions need to be expressed and things like that. They're going to need to balance that with their own intensity, with what kind of power they express. There's usually like a power struggle between the moon and Pluto when they're opposing one another. Some kind of power struggle between the two, oftentimes, or something along those lines. Exactly how would depend on, what's going on in your whole chart, but yeah. So you have that going on. So you've got this opposition going on, and then you've got those two planets. In the original example, I had the sun. So you've got those two planets squaring the sun. So not only do you have this opposition, this kind of need to balance power and emotions, but you also have the ego and your sense of identity and all of those things at odds, or having tension with power and with emotions. So you have all this shit going on in the T-square, right? And it's not, the T-square is not a stable, it's not considered a stable pattern. That doesn't mean that the person that has this is unstable. I'm not saying that. But it's not stable in the way a grand cross is stable. And a grand cross is when you would add a fourth planet to oppose the sun in this case. So you would have a series of 4 squares. That is a more stable aspect. The T-square is not as stable. So the real challenge with the T-square is, how do you stabilize it? Well, I would understand the way that first of all, I would try to balance the opposition. The opposition is important here. Kind of calling a truce, if you will, between those planets. Balancing them is important. It's important for the apex planet, or however you want to think of the planet at the tip of the triangle. It takes stress off of that planet when the 2 planets in opposition are able to balance. It's important for it. Now, I've always been a big proponent of using midpoints for the square aspects. So in this case, I would want to look at the midpoint between the moon and the sun, and I would also want to look at the midpoint between the sun and Pluto, see where they fall in the chart. Because by house and sign, that might give you an idea as to a way to ease the stress of the square aspect. I found that often does tend to be the case. I would do that with a regular square too. I would kind of take that approach with just a regular, like the sun square Pluto. I would take that same sort of approach. But you can do that here with the T-square too. Just, you'll have two square aspects that you'll be doing the midpoint formula for. Now, another way that one of the ways that you also balance or stabilize the T-square is with the point opposite the apex planet. So in this example, it would be like, let's say you had the sun at 20 degrees Leo. 20 degrees Aquarius would directly oppose the sun. Now, I would become very familiar, like with the midpoints, right? I would become very familiar with the way with that degree by sign and house. And perhaps what you are lacking in that area of life and by that sign, how that energy is expressed. Usually that's by house and by sign. That is how you where you can kind of funnel some energy to balance that T-square. So like, let's say you've got this, we'll just throw houses into this for just a second. Let's say you have the sun at 20 degrees Leo in the 4th house. Okay, so all of the T-square, the tension from the T-square, right, is going to hit that apex in the 4th house in Leo. How can you balance this, or how can you stabilize it? Shoot that shit to the 10th house. Yeah, like that's kind of how you stabilize this T-square, is in 10th house areas of life, in an Aquarius fashion. If, let's say, the 10th house cusp is actually in Capricorn, that Capricorn will kind of condition Aquarius energy, which makes it just slightly harder. But if the 10th house cusp is in Aquarius, right, it's conditioning the house on its own. So you do want to take all of that into account, but definitely, like in this example, if you have that apex in the 4th house in Leo, 20 degrees Leo, the sun, you would want to then try to stabilize it in 10th house areas of life in an Aquarius way. Now, sometimes by transit, I would definitely, if you got a T-square, I would definitely watch your transits, because as certain planets come around via transit, they might light up that T-square, turning it into a grand cross. and it might give you a window of opportunity to stabilize. Definitely take those windows of opportunity, because unlike there not being a planet there and you having to kind of do this on your own consciously, which sometimes is easy, sometimes it's not. When you've got a transiting planet there, it's already pulling. It's already pulling energy that way. So definitely watch transits and pay attention to transits to that area of the chart. The opposition to the apex of the T-square. Same thing in synastry. And synastry can do the same thing. If you have somebody, if you've got that T-square I'm talking about, and let's say you had somebody who had, I don't know, they had Venus opposing your sun. They had Venus at 20 Aquarius. That also will help to stabilize your T-square. That doesn't always necessarily mean it's easy. I'm not saying that. But it does kind of, your synastry with somebody else could also stabilize an aspect like this. And again, I am not saying that people that have T-squares are unstable. I just mean the aspect pattern is more unstable than a grand cross. So yeah, these are definitely things that I would look at, looking at a T-square. These are things that I would take into consideration. And this is kind of how I read them. But yeah, take a look at your own chart. If you have a T-square in your chart and you'd like to share your own experiences with it, I'd love to hear them. Or any questions or whatever, let me know. If you, just to throw this out there, since I was using the star cards, we do go over this a little bit. We do go over a lot of aspect patterns in the book that comes with it. So it is mentioned. But yeah, I'm going to go and get going. If you want to follow us on Instagram, you can find us at Let's Fuck With Astrology. I'm at Saturn Season Astrology on Instagram. Natalie is at Paterno Astrology on Instagram. If you want to like or subscribe or whatever the fuck people do with videos on YouTube, you can go to YouTube and search for Let's Fuck With Astrology in the YouTube search bar. If you do the Reddit thing, come join us on the subreddit Let's Fuck With Astrology. And if you're interested in the star cards, go to letsfuckwithastrology.com/star-cards. Okay, y'all. I'll see y'all later.